Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. And that in front of me there is Fremantle Prison. We have been here before, but difference today is we're going behind the walls.
I was going to say that, and then the 4:30. Sorry, that's very bad.
So just inside the gate now, and just having a look around. That's the tour in front of me. And that's the gate I just came through. So this prison would have held over 1,000 convicts back in the day. All sent from Ireland and the UK. So let's have a look in here.
Interchangeable terms when you watch news reports from America and UK. But in Australia, when we talk about convicts, there's a cultural thing. We're specifically talking about the 160,000 men, women and children brought here in Australia, from the landing on the first fleet on the eastern coast in 1788 to the last convict boat sent here to West Australia in 1868. Nice round figure, 80 years. And here we have stripped away the render that they put in after 10 years. We've taken away the suicide net, that was put in 1925, we've taken up the concrete that was put down in the 1980s. And after a hard day's labour, this is a recreation of their convict cell. So if you're a visitor, I hope your accommodation is better than this. Have a look. The convict cells are 1.2 metres by 2.1 metres or 3 to 4 by 7 metres. One person per cell. Now, remember, there was no manufacturing here in West Australia. That means all the doors, the windows, everything manufactured had to come from Great Britain. The British Empire is paying for all of this. Why? Because we were among, by the 1850s, the last places in the British Empire willing to accept convicts. People from the UK, do you want this money back? It was too late to spend it. So the limestone is local, the wood is local. The British would also bring old ships here to West Australia to deliberately pull apart to furnish their buildings and houses. So the railings above you come from those 19th century ships. And what you're standing on, this is not the local crumbling limestone. These are flagstones from Yorkshire, England. This is originally ballast. Weights that kept those sailing ships upright as they sailed for 3 or 4 months from Great Britain down to the other side of the world. And I've been told this is worth a fortune. This is forbidden to be exported from the UK. It is that valuable. So as I tell the children on the tour, if you could dig one up, you could take it home. Now, you might have noticed the ensuite. A toilet bucket and a water bucket. So as we tell the school groups, 2 o'clock in the morning, it's very dark, make sure you drink out of the right bucket. And every morning you go out, you empty your bucket in the open sewer, put it cleaned by detailed convicts and picked up at the end of the day. Now expect that in the 19th century, buckets in their cells. But going into the 20th century, the government started to make promises that any year now they're going to knock down this old building and build brand new prisons. Now, if you're going to knock it down in a couple of years, why upgrade it? Well, they kept putting it off and putting it off. And ladies and gentlemen, buckets in their cells right up to closure 1991. That is the major reason why this place had to close down, especially during the summer. No air conditioning, it gets very hot. We have people fainting on tour. That's when the riots occurred.
Wow.
Yeah, isn't this fun? There we go. Now, here we have a page from the prison rule book of 1861. Now, all the staff had to come from Great Britain, all members of the British Army, and for the first 12 years we had a very enlightened contingent of Captain Edward Henderson. And he had a beautiful big house to the south of us called the Knolls. It was enormous. It was so big it became the basis for Fremantle Hospital in 1912. So we have this very strange thing, the hospital's next to the prison here in Fremantle. Now he'd seen that the convict system on the east coast of Australia had developed a reputation for harshness and cruelty. In New South Wales especially, Van Diemen's Land, which is now Tasmania. Has anyone been to Tasmania? Oh, it's so beautiful. My wife and I, we've been there 3 times. It's so lush and green. But convicts were treated very harshly there. So badly, when they ceased accepting convicts in 1854, they deliberately changed their name to Tasmania. Classic case of rebranding. So he wanted the best convicts to be sent here. He didn't want any juvenile convicts or elderly convicts. And I think his biggest innovation that he phased out flogging and solitary confinement, which was used to punishment for convicts who break the laws by doing time. His preferred punishment for a convict was hard labour. If he felt they were breaking out rocks or digging ditches, at least they're doing something positive. Now here we have a scale of time for English convicts. Now the question is, why is Britain exporting its prisoners? We'll put it down very broadly to the Industrial Revolution. People in England are coming from the country into city to work in the factories, not enough jobs, big growth of urban crime. So Britain decided a policy of deterrence. They thought they would deter people from crime if they imposed heavy penalties for major and minor offences. So that is why if you stole a loaf of bread in 19th century Great Britain, you're sent to Australia for 7 years. 10 years for being a pickpocket, 12 years for being a poacher, 14 years for stealing bread, cheese and bacon. And the first registered convict sent here was Samuel Scattergood. He was sent here for 15 years for stealing a sheep. But being among the last places in the British Empire to steal convicts, in the very first convict boat alone had people sent here for rape and for attempted murder. And of course, political prisoners were sent here, Irish rebels, the Tuttle Hall martyrs sent to the East Coast where people would try to form a trade union in newly industrialised England. And especially in the 1860s, we got a lot of military prisoners. Now, there was a British soldier in Malta. In 1862, he threw a cap at an officer, and for that, he was sent here for 15 years. Well, let's follow 7 years. Regardless of your crime, you're going to spend 9 months in isolation in a cell in England. If you're sent to West Australia, you have to learn how to build. So look up, this was built in the 1850s. You know what that means? Very little health and safety. No hard hats, no steel cap boots, no safety equipment. Scaffolding made of wood and rope was swaying the sea breeze. Many injuries, and sadly 5 convicts died in building this main cell block. And remember, these people come from Europe. Have you seen, even though in Malta, how biting, how hot the sun is? You can imagine these people, no sunscreen up there. They'll be, lobster red for the first week. We see that when people come from Rottnest, they don't wear, any stuff on them. And Fremantle had a reputation in the 19th century. This is for the 20th century. They put in asphalt by being incredibly sandy. Sand was blowing in everyone's faces. It was said that Fremantle was a place of sand, sea, sin, and sore eyes. It gets underneath the eyelids, get infected, could set people blind. It was known as sandy. Now, if you survived all that, you go on your parole system ticket to leave. You're sent to one of the convict depots, you're earning money, you're working your way towards your certificate of freedom, and then, once you become free, the British Empire wants these ex-convicts to stay here and settle. But you see, Captain Edward Henderson wanted all convicts sent here to do hard physical labour, and that was thought to be unladylike. So even though they sent male and female convicts to the East Coast, only male convicts were sent here to West Australia. Now that's strange. They have to populate. Can you populate with just men? So explain what's the logic behind that, why Henderson asked for only male convicts here, yet he expects them to populate once they've served their time. So have a look, take a photograph, and I'll explain that story. We've got 2 flights of stairs to the prison library. At one time, it was the largest prison library in Australia, had about 10,000 books. The room below was a kitchen. We'll go to the northern end, had a chapel, and down below became a theatre. In the convict era, these 4 rooms looked like this, and had scaffolding for 60 to 70 hammocks. Now, you see, the British penal system operated under a separate system because there was a philosophy that other prisoners are bad influences. So convicts were kept in separate cells. They're not allowed to talk to each other, and you're spoken to by the guard. But Captain Edward Henderson, once again, a system of rewards. Before you release out the community for a week instead of a poking cell, you're sleeping in a boarding room situation. And instead of an individual toilet bucket, you have the joy of watching each other go in a big wooden tub in the corner. And then 2 convicts were taken through that doorway down the staircase, emptied in the open sewer. And in the early days, that human waste would feed market gardens to the rest of us. Well, you know, our soil is sand and limestone. That human waste was really the only thing we had to grow vegetables. Now, when a convict gets his ticket leave, they say, congratulations, here's your piece of paper, keep that with you at all times, show that to any officer who asks. Here's some provisions about they have to make their way to one of those 25 hiring depots up north or down south of Perth. They go to the depot, there's sleeping arrangements, there is work waiting for them, there's paid work waiting for them. And they're encouraged to buy land, and the government would then pay half the fare to bring their families from Great Britain. Why? Because Henderson asked for a lot of married convicts to be sent here. Can you see what they're trying to do? They're trying to bring intact families to the West Coast, because the convict system in the East, they just sent male and female convicts and hope for the best. You know, those don't do. Now, you're on parole, there's restrictions. You're not allowed to own a firearm, not allowed to belong to association. You can't be found drunk outside of a public house. You break the rules, you commit a crime, you're brought back here to what was nicknamed the Limestone Lodge. You have to start again as a convict. But if you're well behaved, you go on to the next stage, conditional pardon. All these restrictions fall away, except for one. You must stay in West Australia until the end of your sentence. And then once you've served your time, you could go back to Great Britain, but what they hope is you've got your land, your job, your family, that you will stay here and settle. So under Captain Edward Henderson, there was an emphasis on reward, and there was also an emphasis on religion. Religion was compulsory and every day, because remember, these convicts have to be good. They had a prayer service with their morning meals and their evening meals. But because it was a separate system, this, like other prisons in the British Empire, was built deliberately with no big dining halls. Prisoners would get their meals, stand by the cell door, the chaplain would go up and down and turn in the prayer, and then they're locked in their cell. Sundays and Christian holidays like Christmas and Easter for the prison chaplain. Someone took a tumble there this week, and 2 years ago someone very badly tumbled, but we had to get a cherry picker to get them out. Now you can take a seat if you want to, but welcome to the prison chapel, and you can see it was built deliberately to impress. Can you imagine those convicts in the time this were later being locked up in their tiny stinking cells? But they come in here on Sunday, big tall, big wide windows, and look at these windows. Unlike any other windows in prison, there are no glass on. Now, these prisons built in the industrial era was a new philosophy that prisoners could actually be reformed. And that's why prisoners of this era, the chapel faces the gate, because that represents freedom. Now, down below it says, "Him that cometh to me, I will no wise cast out." So the chapel will come up these stairs, the left-hand side, below the chapel's administration. Chaplain was Reverend John Alderson for most of the convict era, British soldier, and the message was spelt out to the convicts: your behaviour determines your sentence. If you are well behaved, if you work hard, we have the power to reduce your sentence. You'll be out of that gate sooner, and sooner rather than later, you'll be a free man. But if you refuse to work, if you are lazy, if you steal, if you escape and we capture you, deliberately built on the other side of this main cell block is the punishment, with flogging with solid confinement. So, convicts, it is a simple choice. Is it freedom or is it punishment? Don't give me, oh, you've got an answer? What's your answer? Very good. That's it. Don't lose her. She's thinking about it. Now, the wood all around this prison that you're sitting on looking at is I love the wood jarrah. In the 1850s, this was chopped down on top of Mount Eliza. That's that big hill overlooking Perth where Kings Park is. Anyone been to Kings Park? That was the area that was left deliberately green by the British settlers. And it was chopped down and rolled down the hills and floated down here in barges. And down south, this was chopped down and shipped all around the world. This was a major export because this wood jarrah is one of the toughest wood in the world. This was used for the London Underground in England. And you can see the skills of the Royal Sappers and Miners. These beams made up of these workshops, they're 10 planks bolted together in steams of these lovely curves. So there's a lot of strength holding up the roof, and yet we get an aura of openness and spaciousness. Now, in the tourism bureau, we have chipped away the plaster there to remind us for the first 10 years there was no render inside or outside the prison. And they found out when convicts collapsed in the hammocks, fleas and lice would breed inside walls, come up and suck on their blood. And it was very important to keep convicts healthy because we want to get a lot of work out of it. So the surgeon said, we've got to put render on the inside of the walls, and they were given a third bucket of lime whitewash, that is crushed down rock and water, to wash down the walls, to keep down the bugs, and I think also to keep down the stench of the toilet buckets. Now, that is artwork done by convicts. It's recently restored, done in 1862, and you can see it's text important to the Christian religion, the Lord's Prayer, the Ten Commandments, the Apostles' Creed. And it was done by two convicts, Charles Hampton, who was sent here for attempted murder, Peter Burgo, who was a burglar, but they were specifically picked because they were artisans. They could paint and decorate. And we have paperwork that they were commissioned to do banners for special occasions, a coat of arms for the Land and Water Police, and for this, they got an early release. What does this tell us? Well, Henderson knew that we needed all sorts of skills to get West Australia started. For among other things, he asked for 30% of convicts to be sent here for fraud, embezzlement, and forgery. Why are these people valuable? They could read and write. You have to be literate to commit these crimes. And these literate convicts, once they served their time, well, they became our school teachers and our clerks and our public servants. James Fleming sent here for fraud, served his time, worked hard, became chief of the telegraph service in West Australia. Joseph Hollick sent here for fraud, served his time, worked hard, while other ex-convicts went up north and founded one of the very first copper mines in West Australia, built a place called Northampton, employed ex-convicts, built facilities for them, and he got government backing to build the very first railroad line in West Australia, connect his mine to the Port Town General. He is reckoned to be the person who founded the biggest success here in West Australia. And in the 19th century, religion was compulsory. In the 20th century, religion was voluntary, and there are ruins below us for other religions. And in the 21st century, this is still a consecrated chapel, and you'll be pleased to know that last year we had 6 marriages here. Isn't that exciting? Well, there's not a lot of old buildings in West Australia. People like to get married in old buildings. And we say, why not get married in a chapel in prison? Surely marriage is a life sentence. I had to get that joke. Now, the first wing we walked through from the library up to the chapel was built from 1852 to 1855. That's when the wall was completed, the site was secure, the first convicts could be moved in. When they built the second wing from 55 to 59, there was already pressure from Great Britain to accept more convicts. So they had to make a physical, there's a physical difference in the northern wing, and I'll show you back in the main cell. And one of them is furnished as an association cell with about 6 hammocks, all sharing one tall bucket. And then you're going to see the art cell. And you can take photographs in that cell, but we ask you to turn off the flash. And then we'll take a seat in that chapel, and I'll tell you the theories of what's behind this artist cell. Because prisoners, there was an arts program for prisoners put in the 1950s, but prisoners were not allowed to draw painting walls unless they got permission. So there's a little bit of castle sort of painting up there, but that's definitely sort of 20th century. So we'll go downstairs. This will take a while because the artist cell is convict size. We're going to fit about 2 or 3 hours.
Swap you, yeah.
Yeah, swap.
This is the name of the prison?
Where is this? Jack? I don't know, some prisoners sort of pretty easy like this.
Okay.
Wow. So 1, 2, 3, 4 people slept in here. Little windows. They look like little kind of spy holes, don't they? Let's have a look out. Let's have a look in. Oh yeah, look at. You can see straight in there.
Still painted European art, but you notice Australia, look here like before, like hunting a kangaroo. And this is our clue. We talked about the chapel, so Jay's got a Jay Walsh was showing off the action side.
This is fantastic, this place.
Yes. So, I mean, you can say it in your own words, but, you know, point out there's Queen Victoria twice, there's the Medusa's head, there's the signature of the convict we think who did it, and the early British soldiers, and the early British artists Still painted Australia with European eyes. So that looks very English. People on horseback hunting dogs, but if you look behind the pole, they're hunting a kangaroo.
Oh wow, yeah. Can you see that thing? Yeah. Wow. Fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's a quotation from the first psalm.
Brilliant. It's well protected.
Well, yes. I mean, it's a miracle when they chipped all that plaster off. Most of it stayed on the walls.
Yeah, yeah.
So, but now we put the perspex so people don't put their grubby fingers on it.
Absolutely.
Now, the central crystal chapel, if you go downstairs, there's large work which says CFE, because the official religion of the British Empire is Church of England. And if all the convicts come from Great Britain, it's thought that's all they needed. But in 1862, due to pressures, they converted this room, this used to be an association called Panics, into a Roman Catholic chapel. And I have to say, it's not for the Italians. There's a big Italian influence in Fremantle. A lot of Italians came up in the First and Second World War, and the influence of politics and fishing, and they established al fresco dining. Because what Englishman is going to put a table out the sidewalk? That's not English, that's the table. So we have the cappuccino street. No, the Catholic chapel was for, surprise, surprise, the Irish. We had a lot of Irish Catholics sent here as convicts. Not only there were Irish Catholics among the guards and the management as well. So the Catholic Church petitioned for their own place of worship. And but behind you, that is post 1988, because as you've seen, this northern wing was heavily burnt. So this is all post 1988. Now this was painted in the 20th century, in 1957, the Sun Man on the Sun Company, but we have chipped away the original paintings underneath. We think that if they commissioned skilled convicts to do the artwork in the Church of England chapel, surely they would have commissioned a skilled convict to do the artwork in 1862. We think that's his cell, that he was allowed to practice on the walls of his cell. You might have noticed there were a lot of Christian iconography on the walls. Now in that cell it says, underneath one of the drawings, James Walsh left the cell nothing much. And we do know that James Walsh was sent here for forgery under convict records in 1852, and he got his ticket of leave in 56, conditional pardon 59, and then within 2 weeks he was busted back down to convict for forging a pound note. And had to serve another 3 years. Then he settled in Perth, and within his own lifetime in Perth he became a well-known artist. His artwork is up in the art gallery, up in Perth under the Colonial Collection. He died in 1871. So we think that he was commissioned to do this artwork. He was allowed to practice in walls, but that's against the rules. Suppose someone from England had come in here and seen that a convict was allowed to draw on the wall. So once he served his time, we think that the authorities just painted over and forgot it. So that cell would have never been known if not someone in 1948 was having a hard day, lost his temper, threw a broom against the wall, knocked a piece of plaster off, revealing those drawings. Now, the very last convict boat to arrive in Australia was the Hugo one, arrived here in 1868. And everyone knew this was the last convict boat to be sent to Australia. Now, what kind of criminals would you put on the last convict boat to Australia? The worst. Why not? So the Hugo had people sent here for murder, for sexual crimes, for mutiny, for treason. Among the 260 convicts were 62 Irish rebels, the last wave of Irish rebels sent to our shores, part of the failed uprising the year beforehand, the Fenians. And there was a core group of 12 military Fenians. These were Irish educated men who had become officers, but in Ireland they were raising private militias to overthrow British rule in Ireland, and of course, that's treason. So they didn't leave British shores without D for desert being branded into their chest. Now one of their numbers was John Paul McLarney, and he worked as assistant in chaplain here, and he was sent to a work party, and within a year he escaped with the aid of a local Irish priest, got aboard a US flag and got the Gazette. Now he can't go back to Ireland. Where would an Irish exile go to? America. He settled in Boston, Massachusetts, and he became quite successful. He ran a newspaper, he published books, he crusaded with horses. There's a statue to him in the streets of Boston. Now, Irishmen here smuggled letters out of the prison, went to a journalist in New York called John DeVoy, how convicts were going blind from the sand, going crazy from the heat, and they said, rescue can't be from land, rescue has to be by sea. John DeVoy took all these letters and he went to Boston because there was an exiled Irish group called the Clan de Gaulle. John Boyle wrote as part of it. In 1974, they decided on audacious plot to free their fellow Irishmen from this, the most isolated prison on earth. They got to capture George Anthony and a boat the Catawba. 11 months before the escape, the Catawba sets out as a whaler, so it wouldn't be suspicious. 3 months before the escape, 2 American agents came here to West Australia. They passed themselves off as rich American businessmen, and they fooled everyone. They even got a dinner at Government House in their honour. And they got a tour of the prison. They contacted the convicts, they contacted Irish sympathisers, and a week before the escape, the Catawba. Now, in 1871, the majority of these Fenians were pardoned because there was unrest in Ireland. Gladstone, the Prime Minister, wanted to keep the peace, but not the officers, because they were deemed to be dangerous people leaders. There were 6 of them at this time. They were told Easter Monday 1876, when you're working outside the walls, slip away from the work party, go to a street in Fremantle. There will be the horse and cart of the 2 American agents. Hop aboard. And imagine this is the coastline of West Australia. Then down the coastline to a place called Rockingham. Go to a beach with a jetty. There will be the longboat of the Catawba. Hop aboard and row for 8 hours out in the ocean to Rottnest Island, because there is anchored the Catawba. They're going to hop aboard and sail all the way back to the United States. Now they'll see another workman without convicts seem to escape. Long story is, I'm going to tell a very short one. The landlord of this commandeered a steamer called the Georgette. They filled up with soldiers and cannonballs, and they strapped cannons to the front of this passenger steamer. And they chased them on Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday morning, caught up with them. The steamer passed the sailing ship, turned around, fired a shot across its bow. Superintendent Stone stood on the Georgette and said, "Ahoy, Catawba, we understand you have 6 of the matched convicts aboard. Surrender them to us or we shall fire on you again." And then capture George Anthony, American. He unfurled the American flag, because you know, that's what Americans do. And he said in so many words, "We're in international waters, this is my flag protects me. If you fire upon the ship, you're firing upon the American flag." And the legal minds of the Georgette realised, well, he had a point. Because this is not a stolen ship, it's a ship from another nation. If they should fire upon that ship, God forbid sink it, that will cause a huge international scandal. And they reckon it just wasn't worth it for a couple of lousy convicts. So they very reluctantly let them go. And they sailed away to great acclaim to the Irish populations of New York and Boston. It's an epic story. I've told you a really short version of it. This is reckoned to be the most successful convict escape in Australia's history. It took a lot of planning, a lot of secrecy, a lot of money. Now, there's a lot of Irish and Irish descendants in Australia, and I've got to tell you, here in West Australia, they love this story. There's 7 books about the gift shop. There have been plays, there have been musicals, there have been reenactments, there's TV documentaries. And my favourite postscript story is 3 months later, the Chief of Police of New Bedford, Massachusetts, received a letter from the Attorney General of West Australia. Why? Because on the back of the Catawba said Catawba, New Bedford, it's just outside of Boston. And this letter said, "We know what the people on the Catawba did, please return our convicts." But there was no extradition treaty between the US and Australia at the time. And anyway, the Chief of Police of New Bedford, Massachusetts, like all good policemen in America at that time, was Irish. And not only was he Irish, he was a friend of John Morrison. He had helped to plan the escape. So now we're going to the back room, and I'll show you a photograph. Where King's Park is, you might know there's a brewery for being unearthed. That became a home for elderly convicts, so didn't find family or didn't settle down. And he thought the last convict was Samuel Speed. He died there in 1932. He was 93 years old. So imagine coming over here in the 1860s in sailboats, and then he died in 1930s Perth at the time of the motor car and motion picture. And a lot of convicts were sent here for setting fire to haystacks. That seems very strange. But people when the Industrial Revolution hit in England were being kicked off the land because they're amalgamating farms to create produce. So people were kicked off the land. So So these yards are dug deep into the limestone hill during the convict era. In the prison era, they divided up prisoners according to their crimes. It sort of settled this: First Division, people serving less than a year; Second Division, serious crimes, non-violent. This is Third Division, serious crimes, violent, like bank robberies and assaults. Fourth Division, lifers and murderers. And now inmates are working inside the walls, not outside the walls. If you had no work on weekend or public holidays, a yard like this could hold about 100 and 110 prisoners, with one guard. If things get out of hand, he retreats to the cage, blows a whistle. There's an armed guard up on the embankment. When you get closer, there's holes cut the fence. When we go to the punishment yard, you'll see one of the 7 gun towers put in the 1960s, and other guards will grab guns and assist. And that grassed area was a forbidden area to prisoners, because can you hear the traffic? Up there, that is the boundary wall and freedom. You know what that road is? Hampton Road. So that's the governor who was here and who was humiliated by Moondyne Joe. Now, not on this side of the prison, the other side, imagine this is 1867, it's all blinding white limestone. Moondyne Joe and other convicts being punished, they're wearing chains in their arms, they're wearing multicoloured uniforms, so they're easily seen if they escape, yellow and black. And they plant rocks in front of them, and they spend all day breaking up rocks with a hammer. Now it's in the hot Australian sunshine, they've got big hats, and Moondyne Joe was put in the southwestern corner of the prison up against the wall, because he's a troublemaker. It was found out later, when he was breaking up rocks, he always made sure he was behind the pile of rubble, so they could see him, but only from the waist upwards. But because they can't see what he's doing behind the pile of rubble, he's up against the wall, he's smashing the wall behind him. The walls were not this repaired stuff, there was that soft crumbling stuff I showed you at the beginning of the tour. He is creating a hole to the outside. At the end of the day, just put in some loose rocks. Now, 4th of March, a cannon is fired in front of the prison because a convict has escaped outside the walls. The prison has to alert all of Fremantle if there's an escaped convict. And Moondyne Joe has noticed over the years that when a cannon fires, the guard has to momentarily leave the yard, go to administration and get orders and then come back. So this time, he goes off for orders. When he comes back, he does a head count. All the convicts out in the parade ground are accounted for. And over there, Moondyne Joe has worked so hard, he's created a big pile of rubble. What an industrious convict. But they know he's still there, because over the pile of rubble, they can see his hat. After a while, what do you think they notice about the hat? It's not moving. They go around the pile of rubble, there's a hole in the wall, he's gone. Behind the pile of rubble, he had taken his pickaxe, put it on a rock, put his hat on top, so on the other side it looked like he was still there. And hanging on that was his convict uniform, because to escape from prison in a convict uniform would be suspicious. I guess escaping from a prison in your underwear is not suspicious at all, but he left his uniform behind. And he was on the road for 2 years, robbing up and down the coast. Now the governor and the governor's son were furious, put a reward of £10, but the papers had great fun of this, and they published a poem. The governor's son has got the mumps, the governor's got the measles, Moondyne Joe's given the slip, pop goes the weasel. He was captured 2 years later up at Horn's Winery up in the Swan Valley, which is our wine and farm district. Poor Moondyne, he chose the wrong night to rob that cellar. The very same night, the wine owner had invited 3 policemen back for a drink. It was bad timing. Now, he could have been locked up for 19 years, but at his trial he said, "I was potted in my cell by the Comptroller General, and I was promised my freedom if I escaped." And they actually knocked a couple of years off his sentence. He was out in 5 years. He married, had a child, and in his old age he became a celebrity. He had a book written about him in his lifetime. In 1890, he did an interview with a newspaper. The photographer, himself an ex-convict, William Chopin, noticed that he had a kangaroo skin jacket. And this was his old bush ranging outfit, skills taught by Aborigines. So he said, "Can I have a photograph in this?" And if you go to the toilets afterwards, our toilets say, "This is the corner of the prison where Moondyne Joe escaped." You see that photograph, he's wearing the jacket and the beard, and you'll see that photograph in every book about West Australian history, because within his own lifetime, he became our best known convict and our best known bushranger, that is our best known bandit. Unlike Ned Kelly, he never killed anyone. His crimes were quite minor. As you might have gathered, he is celebrated for his many escapes, and he died 10 years later in Fremantle, 1900. Well, now we'll go to one of the places he escaped to. We're going to the punishment yard and solitary confinement. Now, if you break rules in society, you're sent to prison. But if you break rules in prison, there are punishments, and it's usually minor offences, minor punishment. But there was, as I told you, there could be just as many, if not more, convicts than free settlers. So punishments can be major for major and minor offences. In fact, in 1852, they were so paranoid about so many convicts here, they passed a law. If a convict would rob a free settler, that would be deemed a capital crime, and you could be sentenced to death. But you were not hanged here. You were taken up to Perth, stand trial. If you were found guilty, they would hang you deliberately in public in front of other assembled convicts to serve as a warning. And that is why you do not visit the gallows on these tours. No convicts were hanged here during the convict era. Only when this became a civilian prison, they brought the gallows here and started hangings in 1888. This refractory block was built by Royal Sappers and Minor Labour alone. Dr. John Henderson built it under protest because the governor at the time, Wakefield, insisted. Remember, he phased it out, had to build it back in. But this was used for punishment up to 1975. This is the prison within a prison where people who had broken the law are locked up for 23 out of 24 hours. They have 1 hour of exercise. In the 20th century, they're brought here, have a bath, they put on their clothes, the guard yells out numbers, they go backwards and forwards for an hour. Look at these numbers. Now the 7 dropped off between 1 and 21. There are 2 numbers missing. What are the 2 missing numbers?
$16.
There is no 6 or 16. You see, when death row was put here, when he started hangings in 1888, it is said that they deliberately took out the 6 or 16 because they sought to taunt prisoners and remind them of their ultimate fate. Because 6 is felt to represent the hangman's noose, and 16 represent the hangman's noose and the hangman. And when death row moved to New Division in 1907, they took the numbers, repainted the numbers inside, but they kept these off the menu out here in the exercise yard. So we'll go inside, the doors are open, pick a nice cell.
There is no 16.
I have the key first.
Imagine being stuck in here for 20 odd hours a day. You know me?
Notice how very accurately it is when I talk. The stairs are deliberately curved the corridor of the cells, so the guards can hear the slightest sound and quiet. When I'm talking, very difficult double door system. Double doors also for security. When you open the second door, that person might attack you. So there's 2 guards and 2 doors to control. These side are the night cells. There's been the night cell and the day cell. Every time they swap over, you get the toilet bucket, change your clothes, morning, evening, also bread and water. Night cells, 3 blankets, sleeping on 4 buckets, day cells, buckets, and a Bible to read. If it's your first offence. Your first offence, you put in the light cell. That means there is light coming through the bars of your window. But if you should re-offend again, the magistrate says to you, might feel you have not learnt your lesson. These 2 cells, they deliberately put a shutter up in your day cell. Now the shelter was put in when this became an arts and crafts block. This is the replica of the flogging post. The floggings were held in the yard. There were rather public on the eastern side of Australia. Remember, West Australia was the last place in Australia to receive convicts. We received our first convict boat in 1850, and that's when the last convict boat was sent to Sydney. But the idea of flogging is not so much to punish the individual. The screams are heard all around the prison and all around Fremantle to warn the convicts out there that you better behave or you're next. So the idea is to put fear and therefore control into their hearts. And therefore you're flogged not only for major but for minor offences. So for escaping, it's usually 3 months solitary and 100 lashes. But in 1862, 2 convicts had misbehaved in morning prayers. They had talked during the prayer service. So one of them got 75 lashes and the other one got 100 lashes. And that was the maximum in West Australian law. But remember, he's not allowed to die. So the surgeon is always present. When the prisoner's brought here, the shirt is taken off, a leather band around the neck to protect the jugular vein, around the waist to protect the kidneys. Legs tied up here, arms tied up so. Convicts are assembled so they tell others the horrors that they see. And the flagellator is the guard of the cat of nine tails. We keep it under lock and key. Now this is a recreation. It's based on the whips we have in our collection. And you can see this wooden handle. You see 9 strands of rope, and this at the end. And the flagellator would take 2 steps back, because you take 1 step in, the second step you can really put some elbow grease in that first whack across the back. The first 2 strokes break open the skin. Then each repeated blow creates a pulp of skin, flesh, blood, even showing bone. Now at the end of the flogging, or usually the surgeon would call out halt, because they're not allowed to die or be crippled. They'll be cut down and laid face down in the blanket. And look at this back, it's been cut up so bloodied. And remember, he's not allowed to die. The surgeon must sterilize the wound. What would they rub into the wound to sterilize it?
Alcohol.
Salt.
Salt.
Salt is rubbed into the wounds. Carried screaming or unconscious to the prison hospital. After a month or so, the back heals up. But if he has not received the full sentence, he's taken back here, tied up, and given the rest of the sentence. So 100 lashes would take a couple of weeks, even months, to fully carry out. Last flogging was held here in 1943. Flogging was finally taken off the statute books here in sunny West Australia, 1992. When the prison had closed down, there was no more flogging done. This was the major tool to keep the convicts in their place. And that is why if you see an Australian film or TV series or book, there's always has to be a flogging scene, because that was the main way to keep them under control. That is why when you go into the gift shop, we sell a fine collection of whips, chains and handcuffs, because it just makes me proud to be an Australian. Now, my convict ancestor was Nicholas Delaney, and my mother came from New South Wales. My convict ancestor was part of the United Irish Uprising of 1798, and he was originally up for killing a British soldier with 3 other Irishmen, but they couldn't prove it in court. But they did have proof, and my mother got the trial record, they did prove that someone witnessed he stood up at a pub in Ireland and said, "To hell with the English." And for that he was sent to New South Wales for 10 years in 1801. So he served his time, and here I am. So I truly have convict blood flowing through my veins. Can you see that? Little arrows going up and down. Well, we'll just lock this away, and we'll go to administration and wind up the tour.
Well guys, I hope you've enjoyed that interesting tour of Fremantle Prison. There's plenty of other tours you can do here. That was just one of many. Alright guys, until next time, adios. Bye Matthew.
Okay, thank you. I'll look it up on their website. Let you have a look.